What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Real Vibes, man. We back with the Uppercut Pod, man. I had to record. This was a legendary night of boxing. First of all, we gotta talk about the whole Ring Six. We gonna get the Shakur. You feel me? We gotta talk about the whole night. What a night! So many great fighters, so many great fights. I wish we got Carlos Adames today. One of my favorite fighters. He had to pull out for that first event, but every event after that was super eventful. You feel me? We had Jarrell Miller. His he had some hair problems to say the least. If you ain't see that, look up Jarrell Miller on Twitter or something. You feel me? He won his fight though, so he did a good job. But he's definitely getting laughed at right now, man. That was already legendary in itself. Like for real, dog. Once your hair start going in the crown area, get rid of it. Feel me? Gotta get rid of it. It ain't. Don't even try to. You feel me? Just get rid of it. Um, Next fight up, we had Bruce Carrington. Feel me? Put on a show against Carlos, bro. It was a great performance. Like he just finally just put himself on the map. Like I know a lot of people who are maybe casuals or didn't know much about boxing. Who tuned into this one. Yep, he just put his name on the map with this one. He put on a great performance. Maybe only lost 2 rounds, but dictated the whole fight. Used his jab well. Stood in the middle of the ring. I was very impressed, and I can't wait to see what he continues to do. Keyshawn Davis. He stopped the guy who wasn't getting stopped. Jermaine Ortiz. We all been talking about it all these weeks long. Some people think Tiafimo, he beat Tiafimo. Some people think it was a super close fight with Loma. Like even you could edge that. Like Jermaine Ortiz gave, some great fighters, some legendary fights. So when he was, put up against Keyshawn, we was like, oh man, this might be some trouble. And it wasn't for the most part. It wasn't. Keyshawn is an amazing fighter. He put on an excellent performance. Got the stoppage in the 12th round, like 10 seconds left. That was crazy. I thought, he knocked him down. He hurt Jermaine multiple times in a fight. Jermaine always stayed game though. He's a good fighter. He's experienced. He never wavered. He had some rounds that were, he made close. So you gotta tip your hat to Jermaine. He did his thing out there, but he just went against, superior fighters tonight. And Keyshawn Davis, man, there's nothing you could really say. All around good performance. I wonder if y'all think the ref should have stopped it when he did. Some people think, give him a shot to get up, with 15 to 10 seconds left. I'm not mad at the stoppage. She was starting to take damage. If there was more time left on the clock, I think he probably still would have stopped it. He was taking a lot of damage the last few rounds, and I'm not personally mad at it. Good job to Keyshawn, man. Ultimate performance tonight. Then we got to talk about Shakur Stevenson, man. I don't even know what to say, man. That was literally crazy. That was one of the, best performances, not only of this year, of the decade. To do that against, former unified 135 champion Teofimo Lopez, Ring Magazine champion Teofimo Lopez, the slick, athletic, twitchy boxer in Teofimo Lopez. He made him look ordinary. A lot of people think it was a shutout. I gave T.O. 1 round, but essentially it was a shutout, man. T.O. never dictated the pace of the fight. He never had control of the fight. I did think he did a solid job. Like, when it comes to Shakur, right, he usually doesn't get touched. He's usually not getting touched, right? So he's getting touched, 1 to 3 times or less in a lot of other fights. Zepeda excluding, but he's the ultimate pressure fighter times 10. Zepeda applied pressure all day long. He could go for all day. Zepeda's a great fighter, good fighter. But besides Zepeda, who else I feel like touched Shakur a lot? We really gotta think about that one. Like, and I'm not saying Tiafimo touched Shakur a lot, but he had some moments in there. He was hitting Shakur to the body. But wasn't enough at all. You know, Shakur basically dominated him, made him miss all night long. Tia was reaching, you know, and just couldn't get to the guy. You know, stood in the pocket with him too, was not running. You know, if you watch this fight, you know Shakur was not running. He was standing in front of the bigger guy who he moved up to his weight class and bullied him. Bro, that was crazy. That's all I could really say, man. That was crazy, you know. Shakur really might be one of the, you know, GOATs. And, you know, that might be too fast to say, but right now at 135, I don't see no one beating him. At 140, I don't see no one beating him. I thought Tiafimo would have been the best challenge, you know. Do you think Tiafimo is better than Africa, or do you think Tiafimo is better than Gary Russell, Gary Antoine Russell? You know, I was thinking so before that. I was, you know, I believe that. You know what I'm saying? So he beat the top guy, you know, the guy with the Ring Magazine belt, which is the most important belt. I try to emphasize that Ring Magazine belt is the most important. You know, he beat the guy with that. And also, man, it's gonna be he gonna move up to 147 eventually. I don't think it's gonna be soon. He even said it himself. You know, 135. He not gonna rush into that. I mean, 135 is where he's gonna stay at. He's not gonna rush into staying at 140 or moving up to 147 or stuff like that. But he would just boost his legacy even more. I know he'll eventually get to 147 and take on all those guys, but I think he's going to continue to dominate everyone at 135, 140 for a while. He said he feels good there. So I believe him when he says he's going to stay. He's already a four division champ. You know, he started at 126. Now he's already at 140. You know, when do we think he's going to be at 147? Maybe soon. Maybe. You know, he did call out Conor Benn. Him and Conor Benn was kind of arguing, after Shakur won the fight. So, you know, they got into like some argument, tug of war of words, after the ring. So it's gonna be interesting to see what he does next, man. I already think it's gonna be a good chance he's fighter of the year for this performance. He probably fights one more time this year. You know, assuming he wins that, it's gonna take a Herculean performance to become the fighter of the year. I think this is a Shakur year. You know, it would either take a Bam beating a NOA, Wilder beating Usyk, like something ridiculous for someone to take this fighter of the year away from Shakur. This was, like I said, not only a great performance, it was a legendary performance and one that won't be forgotten. All the hats out to my favorite fighter, Shakur. Man, he did it again. He did it again, man. And I just wanted to come on real quick, give y'all a quick analysis. I ain't gonna stay for too long. You feel me? Drop in the comments which one was your favorite fight of the night, and then who should Shakur fight next, or who would give Shakur the biggest problem at either 135, 140, or 147. Comment, let me know, man. Make sure you share this video, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about this channel, man. We continuing to grow and push out this content, Yeah, man, we're on our platforms, X, TikTok, Instagram, at the Uppercut Pod. It's your boy Real Vibes, and I'm out.